What is reality? Have you ever wondered about that? It is not a given. The world you live in, yourself, the earth, the stars in the sky, the situations you face in everyday life, the news in the papers. Seriously speaking, does it make any sense at all to question reality? Well, whether you wish to question reality or not, you may need to. You are indeed a victim of more illusions than you can imagine. If you have seen my previous podcast, The Body Conscious, you may already have an idea about what I'm hinting at. First, let me point out that it is not within human capacity to grasp what ultimate reality is. It completely escapes our observations and dives deep below our imagination. All we may say is that reality is. Being is. That is about as far as we can go. The realization of the subjective experience of our own being, our own presence in the world, is our reality, yet there is more. Let me briefly take you through some ideas about reality that philosophers have considered through the ages. The most general one is that what we perceive through our senses, or that which we may in one way or another transmit to the perception of our senses, is reality. One further step, we may say that what most of us record via our senses is reality. This implies a certain consensus between us about that which is sensed. Another view is that all we do not fantasize about is reality. This implies that our fantasies are unreal, but are they? Yet another view says that what is, whether I am there or not, is real. How could you know? Then there is the so-called solipsistic view, that I am all there is, and all exists by and through me. In your case, you. A rather self-centered idea. Finally, some have come to the conclusion that reality is exactly where everything stops. The world sits on the back of an elephant, standing on a huge turtle, on top of another turtle, turtles all the way down. Amusing. Reality is an interesting issue that has been discussed by several philosophers. An example I would like to draw on John Locke and George Berkeley, two philosophers with opposing ideas about reality. Locke would most probably subscribe to the first view I just presented, a very materialistic view saying that objects in the world are real, solid bodies, and that our thoughts, ideas, concepts, and descriptions of the world are the result of observations we make via our senses. Berkeley, on the contrary, found that this view threatened faith. He was a priest, so he explained that all objects in the world are compositions of ideas emanating from God. All objects we perceive are divine ideas experienced in the human mind. Matter in this understanding is not real. If we move on to David Hume, who picks up where the two left, reality becomes a matter of perception and ideas, the former being impressions from the senses, which the latter being the secondary derivations thereof. As an empiricist, he seems to ride with Locke, but he adds that illusions take place in our ideas when we do not understand our perceptions correctly. Thus we return to doubt. When can we be sure that what we perceive is true, or truly correctly interpreted? Berkeley was an Anglican priest, so his view developed from a religious ground, not a scientific. Yet it is philosophy. Science at this time was about to rise, and scientific views easily came into conflict with religion, saying that man should not try to investigate divine nature, God's creation. Today this reality is entirely different. Religious thought has remained mostly a standstill, while science has moved human knowledge forward at an ever-accelerating speed. Faith and knowledge have moved apart. Even so, it is relevant to ask, how do we know that we know that we know? Is our knowledge a victim of illusion? Remember, many of those things we once thought we knew have been discarded and replaced by new knowledge, lasting until it too is replaced. Knowledge is continuously on the move and changing. So, there is always room to doubt. According to Descartes, doubt was the best indication of one's existence. Doubt proved that you were thinking, and therefore you must be. The observing, doubting, thinking subject obviously have to exist to be real. This implies that you and I, as doubting, thinking beings, must exist. Let us hold this to be true, just as I have some ground to build on. From a solipsistic view, your presence would just be an emanation from me. Likewise, my presence would just be an emanation from you. All the electronic gear in front of you would also be emanating from you as a kind of a manifest fantasy. I think we understand this cannot work. So let us return to Locke, to a very materialistic worldview, asking, is matter real? In everyday experience, we touch objects, move them around, combine them, and change them. Less solid, say the air we breathe, we can feel it waving our hand in the wind. Indeed, we perceive a lot via our five senses, and from those perceptions we develop ideas about the world and our place in it. Now, how can it be that we are sure this is not an illusion? What would indeed be to say that we all perceive illusions exactly actually not being there, and we move into a view approaching that of Berkeley? Ultimately, that would make God the only true reality, the divine being alone. You and I would just be extensions of divinity, a perfect dream. You and I and everything would be unreal. Considering that this does not explain reality either, where do we go? As you may remember in previous podcasts, I have discussed matter. It is not an illusion, it is real. But we need to move deep down into it to understand what matter really is. We need to enter the quantum world and even beyond. I will briefly pick up on that line of thought. Considering matter being composed of the elements we find in our periodic table, we also understand its particulate condition. The basic particles are the quantum particles such as the quarks, the electrons, the photons, the muons, and a few more. These are the absolute basis of matter as far as our science goes. Such particle, say a muon, is a so-called point particle, being described scientifically as having no extension, no weight, no inside or outside. Yet it exists. It is there, somewhere, taking part in the construction of what we call matter. Beyond this, all is theory, mathematics based on concepts that may and may not be true. Truly, matter is a mystery, yet it makes up practically everything we use to orient ourselves in life. In a way, we cannot disregard matter and material objects and bodies as non-existent or unreal. Matter and all it composes are at least part of reality. You and I are also real. There is no way we can escape these insights. Therefore, we try to explain it. Unable to deny reality, we have to admit it contains both the seen and the unseen. We observe the world with our senses and their extensions in the shape of instruments, telescopes, microscopes, X-rays, and more. We also observe Emotional states, just as we also experience a beautiful sunset, not only with our eyes. Then we have dreams, fantasies, ideas and inspirations. They are also reality, subjective experiences that we may transmit through language and things we create based on those experiences. Poetry, music, art, scientific innovations are real expressions of inner realities and visions. Then back to the question, what is reality? It must be the totality of our experience, and I think it is more. If you consider the limitations of our senses and all of our instruments, I think we are looking at reality like through a keyhole. Reality is vastly more than we may experience in ordinary life. Even though you may see a deeper reality by entering extraordinary states of consciousness, there is more. My own experience holds that the basic reality when all structures, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, have been fully undressed is consciousness. Pure being, limitless, timeless, emanating every level of the secondary reality we are able to experience. Hence you and I and every philosopher and scientist on the planet are left to speculate. As I have shown, the limitations of both philosophy and science proves that fundamental, all-encompassing reality is entirely beyond every concept we may formulate, every fantasy we may conjure up. I here leave you to fantasize. Until next time.